Welcome, everyone, to a Friday night here on Nerd of the Rings. I've got a couple special guests and friends with us tonight. We've got Yoyston from Men of the West.
Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for having me.
And we have the Clueless Fangirl on the channel once again.
Hello, beautiful people. Sorry for my setup. It's a bit light and dark. I'm not at home in my usual setup. I'm on holiday, so it looks a bit weird.
It's a bit 2 a.m., 3 a.m. there, right?
Yeah, you are very dedicated to be. When I invited you, I was very surprised that you said yes, because I knew that there was a big time difference. I couldn't remember the exact time difference. Yeah. But you're dedicated to the news of Lord of the Rings for sure.
Exactly. You blew the horn, and I saddled the horse.
Answered the call.
I answered the call. Germany answered the call.
All right, so Fingers Titan just touched on it. So we're gonna dive right into War of the Rohirrim, because we've got a few topics. So we're gonna cover the Gil-galad and Celebrimbor articles that came out and the new images from Rings of Power. But first, we're going to start with some War of the Rohirrim news. So there was a couple big casting announcements. So one is that Brian Cox is going to be playing Helm Hammerhand. And even eclipsing the title role was the news that Miranda Otto is returning as Éowyn. What kind of reactions did you guys have when you heard that?
Oh, Helen? Yeah. Helen, go first.
Well, Éowyn is obviously a well-known and well-beloved character. I never heard, any Éowyn controversy or anything like that. And I'm always a big fan, so my imagination is she does something similar, because obviously the timeline is way before the Lord of the Ring books, right? The Helm Hammerhands lived way before that time. So she'll narrate it. And I always loved, Galadriel in a way narrating the Lord of the Rings. So I really like, she's probably telling somebody the story of their people, of their ancestors, and I really like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Like the oral tradition part, especially in that sort of Anglo-Saxon culture, it's a big deal. And when we look at how Tolkien always frames his narratives, there's always some sort of frame narrative at play, whether it's Bilbo writing it or Bilbo kind of getting all the records together in Rivendell. So that this has a frame narrative. Perhaps Éowyn is telling this story to Borahir, her descendant or her grandson, who would go on to write the tale of Aragorn and Arwen. Like something like that would be really amazing to see.
Yeah, I love the oral tradition and the idea that we're getting Éowyn as a narrator. The one thing that came to my mind pretty quickly actually was, will we get an animated Éowyn, or is there a chance you think that we actually get a live action Éowyn and then the film transitions into animated?
Oh, that I hadn't thought about that. That would be awesome. I think
that'd be pretty darn fun.
Yeah, I think the it would also depend on the animation style, how well they could integrate that. Yeah, but that would be a really awesome way to frame that. Wow, I hadn't thought about that before.
Which naturally brings up the question, can we get David Wenham back as well and have a Faramir cameo? Can you imagine though, like if they're telling, their child or grandchild the story and like sitting down there in Ithilien, ruling as the prince and lady of Ithilien?
And it works so well. 20 years later, they've aged 20 years, and it's like they're telling their child this. Oh, that they have to do it now, Matt.
I would love it. I would eat that up so much.
Oh yeah.
So somebody in the chat, and I just wanted to say it, it's like the Princess Bride. Obviously, that was not animated later on, but to tell the story, granddad or grandma opens the books and tells a very reluctant child or anyone, hey, do you want to hear about your ancestors? No, not really, but okay.
And Yoyston, you brought up the oral tradition that Philippa So if you haven't seen, I've got all the articles that we're going to be talking about in the description. So if you want to read those at some point, you can. But we'll touch on a lot of the big takeaways that we had. But Philippa makes the point that, this story, a lot of these Tolkien stories are kind of fragmented. There's notes here and there. So you've got bits and pieces. And so it kind of fit with the idea of, these are the scattered notes of what people can remember of these stories. And this is Éowyn passing on that oral tradition to the next generation. And they even, the One Ring postulated that it might be Barahir, the grandson, because Elrond, the son, is only mentioned in, is it Unfinished Tales?
I think so. Yeah.
It's not within the appendices, but Barahir is, which is interesting. But yeah, we've talked so much about between TV shows and movies. We talk about the rights a lot. And then another thing that I really liked was Philippa talks about Brian Cox being cast as Helm Hammerhand, and how the quote I wrote down was how he's a true manifestation of the King Protector, and talks about how, as we know from the Helm Hammerhand story, he goes out of Helm's Deep, what would later be known as Helm's Deep, named after him, while they're trapped in that fortress, and he goes out and and beats his enemies with his bare hands. It is the most awesome. I cannot wait to see that.
I love it. He has a hammer. He just chooses not to use it.
Right. Yeah. He's got a horn though. The horn of Helm Hammerhand.
Inspires fear. And it's interesting to go back to a point you made before, Matt. If they're kind of using this from the scattered notes of the Rohirrim about their ancient kings, will this be framed in such a way that postures up the Rohirrim, that kind of presents them as the good guys and the Dunlendings as the bad guys? From this article, it seems like they're really going to humanize Wolf and Freka, which would be interesting from Éowyn telling that point of view, telling the point of view of the Dunlendings and saying, even though we are of the Rohirrim, we've made mistakes in the past, we have taken their land, right? That sort of thing.
Yeah. I think, she specifically talks about Wolf, who will be the main antagonist. And, what she kind of poses the question. Obviously, they're not going to give too much away in an article about the main villain, but, what's driving him. And, we get a little bit about the Mumakil that we've seen in the concept art by John Howe. What's that alliance like? And it's definitely one of those where, as you read the story, I think the Dunlendings weren't in the right, obviously, but you also kind of think like Helm probably could have handled it less intense than he did. He definitely escalated things instead of de-escalating things.
Because I want to say he started it all because he insulted Freka's weight or something. It's been a while since I've read that story, but it was like he insulted his weight. Freka did something, and he was like, "Let's take this outside," and then he punched Freka.
Well, Freka tries to force Helm's daughter to marry his son, marry Wolf, and things just
escalate.
Back and forth, escalate. They go outside to fight, and Helm, punches him, and he dies. Hence the moniker Hammerhand. Yeah.
But it's so cool because you have with Helm, you have, a very epic war hero, and they tell, their children still the story. They name, a castle, fortress after him. But we will, and I hope we will see that, and you see it in the story, in the actual story. He's not just a good character. Yes, he saved them, then later on from starving in the castle and everything. But the thing is, he's not a good character, and Wolf, in a way, did have, he was very rebellious right from the get-go. He never
Yeah.
went to these councils and all that. But if
Mhm.
you look at medieval traditions, how medieval kings and the feudal system worked, that was very common in our
Yeah.
time, right? Many barons, didn't went to the king's council and stuff like that. So I really like that this is really like our real history.
Mhm.
And he's not just a good king, and I want that to be portrayed, him being, a in a way divided character. He sullied the bloodline by doing a lot of bad things as
Mhm.
well.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's a great point, Helen. And I wonder how they approach the character of Freyalof, his
Mm,
Yeah.
return into Rohan and Edoras and all of that from
Yeah.
Dunharrow.
Yeah.
And if it's more like a Hamlet sort of thing, like, oh, these guys killed my uncle, or and I'm going to seek revenge on them.
Yeah.
Also,
Yeah.
Matt, the Muma kill.
Yeah, I think so. So one of the things I'm most, I think one of the things I'm most excited about this film is it would be the same opportunity that any prequel has, is to add more um I'm trying to think, I'm blanking on the term. So it can enhance what's come before it. So we have these Lord of the Rings films, and there's so many moments that could land even harder than they already do in the Peter Jackson films.
Yeah.
So I've made this point in previous live streams, I think, but you think of, we've seen one Mumik in this concept art that we have from John Howe, and like Theoden has been, would have been raised on this same story. Like he would know this story. And so when he's on Pelennor Fields and he looks out and sees just this huge, massive line, this army of Mumakil, and his face, he has that epic shot where his face just drops. Like, it adds an extra level of depth, and Éowyn's line, we might get into this a bit more, but shield maidens of Rohan, is a term that Éowyn calls herself and uses, and it's very left up to your imagination what, how much that was a thing, or if it was a thing. There's some notes from History of Middle Earth that talks about a particular invasion by the Easterlings where the women of Rohan fought. So there's some basis there for shield maidens of Rohan, but in the film specifically, Éowyn has that line, "Women of this country learned long ago, those without swords can still die upon them." And I feel like this story could give us that context. And so when she says that, like, I mean, look, you look at this invasion right here, like, I think this is a moment where we will see, the basis for that comment from Éowyn.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And Matt and I have talked privately, and I said, I always wanted a Themyscira, standalone movie, with Wonder Woman's backstory, complete backstory. But I hope, it's not completely about that, because I really want to hear the helm. That would be the focus I would be looking for. But yes, obviously.
Well, yeah, I think we'll still get plenty of helm. Like they've kind of set him up, it sounds like, as the main character, and well,
and I'm wondering about the Mumakil too and their inclusion, like how many this conflict was very much, there were definitely some Easterlings involved, but not really Haradrim as much. I want to say at the same time Gondor was going through a lot of strife with the Corsairs and the Haradrim and Easterlings, which is why they don't really appear in this story much. So it is interesting how much the Easterlings and the Haradrim will appear, right, if we're going to have this Mumakil against Edoras scene. It's a little bit different than the lore, but definitely a change I'm excited for. However, it does beg the question, especially if we're having, Éowyn back and everything like that, how much book lore that doesn't seem as prevalent in the movies universe is going to be present in this telling of the story. because yeah, just things that are kind of deeper in Rohan's lore that might not be as included in the movie. Is it going to feel more like the Peter Jackson universe, or is it going to feel more like a different novelized universe?
Gotcha. Yeah,
I'm not sure.
I get the feeling, especially with considering the people involved, that they're definitely going to be leaning on that familiarity with the Peter Jackson universe. I can't imagine that they're not going to set that aside for anything.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
I could see us, getting a bit more, and it depends, rights comes into it as well. Like, what's in the appendices versus, somewhere else that they don't have the rights to. So there's that. Now I think in this battle, if I've done a video on it, but it's been a while, so my memory's getting a little hazy. I'm gonna have to go back and watch my own video.
Oh yeah.
But I think that it does say that Wolf has an alliance with the Haradrim, or is it the Corsairs?
I thought it was the Easterlings actually, and then the Easterlings came in from the Fangorn.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I knew he had an alliance with someone. But yeah, like during that time, there's a very coordinated attack on Gondor as well.
Yeah. Yep.
From east and south. And so, yeah, I don't think it's outside the realm of possibility by any means, having a Mumik here. Now, if they had like a whole, herd of them, I was going to say flock, but that doesn't make any sense. If they have a whole herd of Mumikil, that might be a little extreme, how the heck do they get there? But you could probably fit one Mumik on a nice sized Corsair ship or something and go up in the sea, and
the winter aspect of this whole thing will be very interesting too, just how that impedes the movement of certain forces, how people will get stuck in Donharrow and all of that.
So I'm guessing like this image here is probably fall time, and then it's for those unfamiliar, Middle Earth is about to see a very, very brutal winter as this story unfolds.
And what is super interesting, you can bring in Galadriel as well, because we have a very, very cool cameo of Galadriel in the whole story of the Rohirrim. She aids them with a weird mist she is sending that is coming from Lothlorien, and it's obviously implied it's Galadriel helping the Rohirrim, so their horses. This is not exactly this story. This is a story about them aiding Gondor. But I think you can still, because we know, lore-wise, she knew of them. She knew they were good because she aided them. Well, I mean, partly she wanted to aid Gondor. I think that was her main focus, but still. So you could even bring in, Galadriel, because it's interesting in the movies later on, they're like, the witch in the east, or the witch. How do they call her? I forgot. But they're not very fond
the Witch of the Woods or something like that.
Yeah. They were not very fond of her, but if you know the backstory of, she actually aided them once, so their horses could reach Gondor faster. It's a really cool cameo and story.
Magic is kind of suspicious for the Rohirrim a little bit.
And I in that article it did say, Philippa was kind of non-committal on whether or not Saruman might make an appearance, which I can't remember the exact year. I think it's a little bit later.
It's like the year. It's like the year after. I think Freylof is cleaning everything up, and then Saruman walks in. Good job, guys. I'm gonna live over here now.
And they're like, "Hey, we just got attacked from up there, so if you could keep things on lockdown, that sounds great."
Oh, absolutely. You'll never have to worry about me. There will never be another threat from Isengard.
All right, we just got a question from Reflective Rambling. Being that it's an older tale, do you think the actual size of the armies battling will be smaller, thus less epic as, say, Pelennor Fields? So I would say I think it'll definitely be smaller than than Pelennor Fields, because that's massive. But I think this could be epic in the sense of, and I think Philippa even touched on this in the article, is that, you know, this is a location in Middle Earth we're familiar with from the films, and it has a sense of, you know, security to it to a degree, and we're going to see it under siege and overthrown. Spoiler alert, but we're going to see it overthrown. If you've watched the videos, you already know what happens. But yeah, so we're going to see a large scale attack on, you know, the capital of Rohan. So while I think, you know, the size of the armies will be smaller, I think there will be large stakes because, you know, in the city itself, there's, you know, a sizable civilian population, you would think. And like my earlier comment about shield maidens coming into play, and, you know, the women learning they can still die upon swords even if they don't wield them. So and Philippa says also in this article that, you know, it kind of starts off like toward the beginning of the story is actually the big battle that usually comes at the end of stories, you know. So Edoras, the siege of Edoras, and then it gets more claustrophobic was the word in the article from there, because you've got Helm trapped at the Soothberg, which is what Helm's Deep was called back then, and then you've got Freyalof and you know, potentially some other created characters. It's not just going to be him, obviously, hiding out at Dunharrow, and it's more small scale after that. But, you know, you kind of, I think you work in some personal stakes there between key characters, and that can still be really dramatic and effective.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think necessarily quantity of like the size of a battle necessarily dictates its intensity or anything like that. Especially, this is the only time in history I want to say that Edoras is specifically attacked and overthrown. And just having, especially if we kind of know the characters, if we can relate to the characters, we see that it's not just the soldiers, but it's also women and children in this battle, and that will really make this intense. It'll make the stakes all that much higher, especially, again, spoiler alert, when they kind of lose, not only at Edoras, but at the Soothberg. And then Freyalof coming back in the spring, that's really the only thing that gives them victory, because Gondor's unable to aid them, and they've lost their king. That direct line of king dies off, and then Freyalof is his nephew, so yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how they play with all of these elements, especially emotionally, how they can kind of connect us to these characters that we don't see later on. Absolutely.
And so that last question was from Of Gondor. So reflective. I don't know why I can't say that. Reflective rambling was kind of boosting Of Gondor's questions. So shout out to Of Gondor for that good question.
Oh yeah.
And then so this is the first time I've had this before, but Manos Borikas gifted 5 Nerd of the Rings memberships. I'm still not 100% sure how that works, but
me neither. That was the first time I've ever seen anything like that.
I just saw that pop up. So shout out to Manos for gifting 5 memberships. So I think you can take advantage of that if you activate the ability to accept gift memberships. That's a brand new feature of YouTube. So so there you go. Yes. So
Matt, are we excited that this is going to kind of correct the course? I see live chat talking about it, but correct the course of the Helm Hammerhand viewpoint, how society kind of sees him after Shadow of War. Shadow of
my
Mordor.
goodness.
Like, very good.
Thank goodness. Yeah. Fantastic games.
Yeah,
fantastic
absolutely.
games.
They're a lot of fun.
But my goodness, don't I get so many questions, you know, on comments and stuff that'll ask me about where Talion comes in, or, you know, what about when Isildur turns into a wraith? And I'm like, son of a gun. No,
yeah.
no, just go into Mordor, kill some orcs, build your armies,
yep,
hang out with crazy wraith Celebrimbor, you know.
Don't pay too much attention to the lore.
Yeah, just ignore everything else.
Yeah.
Wait,
absolutely.
but what I want to be a canon, right, is sexy Shelob. I mean, come on, we need
Oh my
that.
gosh.
Stop.
And and I really like the depiction, like the portrait, because now we have an image of, you know, how Celebrimbor looks. And
Yeah.
I
now
do
we
really
can
like
talk
the
about-
look.
Yeah, same. The armor,
Celebrimbor.
like a lot of those designs in the game, the armors and stuff look great.
Yeah.
Just I don't know, like the insinuation that Shelob and Sauron were an item. I don't like that.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. But yeah, design wise, I really like, you know, I've said, you know, the design of Celebrimbor in the Shadow of War games is kind of like the default in my head.
Yeah.
For the most part, because he's a character that doesn't have a ton of illustrations made of him from the past, you know, decades, because he, you know, he's just not, there's not a lot of dialogue parts really. Unfinished Tales, I think, has his only dialogue with Galadriel.
Oh, that's true.
So, you know, he is a really important character that doesn't have a ton written about him, ironically. So yeah, so, you know,
plus those are 3 different versions of him, you know, plus you know who's the daddy and all these issues. So he is, I think in the article, in the Nerdist article, they even said, you know, he's very well, what's the English word? Sorry, it's very late. He people don't know a lot. He's very mysterious, right?
Yes,
very mysterious. He likes to be alone, and I like what they did with that, and how they hopefully portray him.
I mean, it makes sense. There's definitely, from like a even psychological point of view, there's definitely some trauma in Celebrimbor's history. Being the last Feanorian, he disavowed the deeds of his father and his uncle in Nargothrond, and just he went through a lot. So it makes sense that he kind of wants to hang out with his Smith bros. He just wants to forget the first stage a little bit.
All right, we just got shout out the Lord of the Rings podcast. Thanks so much for the super chat. Greetings from the Lord of the Rings podcast. Thank you for being who you are and doing what you do, mate. My question is, would you like War of the Rohirrim to launch an anthology of animated Lord of the Rings films? Thanks. Yeah, I would like that very much. Very, very, very much. Yes. I love that War of the Rohirrim is a standalone story. It's something we haven't had before, and you know, we've seen, you know, with going to other franchises and stuff, like the whole connected universe of things like Star Wars and Marvel, and like it can be refreshing to just have a single self-contained tale where this is the story of Rohan against an invasion. It's a story of Helm Hammerhand, the story of Freylof, and that's it. Like, that's all there is. It's this one story. It has nothing to do with the Rings of Power. It has nothing to do with Sauron. Well, I mean, in a sense, you know,
very disconnected.
Everything bad has something to do with Sauron by this point in time. But but you know what I'm saying? Like, it's kind of its own thing. And I think there's and you guys, you know, feel free to chime in if you agree or disagree, either one. But I think there's other opportunities for small self-contained stories like this that would make, you know, good films or anime films or live action films or perhaps limited series, stuff like that.
I would agree. And your point about the Marvel Cinematic Universe and all, like how that's it gets kind of bloated and everything. I think returning to a sense of like, yes, this is the same world, but these are very different stories. That is amazing. And I think in the first place, that's kind of what made the MCU so incredible. So I'd love to get a Gondorian Civil War anime after this, or an Angmar War. It's all appendix. The Fall of Moria. All of these sorts of tales that don't connect, but they kind of do because they're in the same world, the same age. And that would just be amazing. And then if they wanted to started like connecting certain stories or certain places and in other stories. Like that's amazing, but it's very much a great place to start off. So.
Yeah. Angmar War was kind of one of the first ones that I thought of after, kind of paging through the appendix and thinking, okay, what else we got? What else we got back here? That would be one. Yeah, I could see that being a film or a series. Honestly, it covers a pretty large amount of time. But again, it's just kind of notes and stuff. But I do like that of War of the Rohirrim, we have some actual dialogue that, we can geek out when we hear those words said, which is always fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
What do you think, Helen?
Yeah, no, I'm with you. So, and what I always like about anime is that I'm a big sucker for battles. This is why I love the Two Towers best. And you can obviously you can how you can show them in an animated series is way different. Yes, obviously, live action is always great, but you can go into details. You can, it's very different if you have it animated. And if you're talking about Angmar Wars, if you talk about the fall of Arnor, I'd be really interested in, how was Arnor split up? How did the Witch King influence that? I can imagine that would be a really cool animated show. And you can then show all the wars, the fall of a city, all those cities fell. I would like to see that animated.
Well, and it's interesting. It would be cool because it's one of the few tales that we get of Arnor as a kingdom. Granted it's destruction, but still, if you were just going off the Peter Jackson films, you kind of get the idea that Aragorn is a descendant of Gondor, which he kind of is, but really his claim to the throne is because he is the heir of Arnor.
Yes.
And the heirs of Gondor are gone. And
well, I do.
So he's the true heir because who held the throne of Arnor.
Arnor is the High King. Yeah.
But it is interesting how I want to say it was Arvedui, the last king of Arnor, married Finduilas. Yes, Finduilas, who was, and that was really one of the only connections. At least both lines came together. But no, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
He's really descended from Arnor.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's two kingdoms now that drowned. Numenor first, and then it happened again. So it's really interesting.
Rings of the North, thanks so much for the super chat. Hi, Matt. I'm a huge fan and want to say I appreciate what you do, and I'm looking forward to the TV show. Well, thanks so much. I appreciate it. We've got a lot of things to like. It's a little bit crazy, honestly, how many things we have in production, right? We have a TV show, we have an anime film, and 2 video games so far.
Matt, I think you're the common denominator. I'll be real. Like none of this really started until you came to YouTube because
it's me. Huh?
I was like, for years I was like doing videos and stuff and nothing was in production. And then all of a sudden 2021, like Matt's coming along and then all the games are being produced. It was just we needed but
it would be Lego. It would be Lego. If that influenced this, it would be Lego.
Gosh. I hope we get some new Legos out of any of these projects because the old school Lord of the Rings ones are very expensive to find nowadays.
I know.
Oh yeah.
I got I took the plunge on getting the Helm's Deep one when I found it for a decent deal, but man, some of these sets are crazy. I would just love for them to re-release some of the old ones, honestly. I would also love some new ones, like a, Minas Tirith or something would be legit.
Ooh. Yeah, I mean, who knows? Since they just did another Star Wars one, and I grew up on like the first Lego Star Wars games, and maybe they'll do a Rings of Power one.
Maybe
something like that.
Man, I would, like I said, I would just love a, like what they did with Lego Skywalker Saga. Like, give me one of those that's just all the Middle Earth Peter Jackson films, that'd be totally fine. I'm still bitter over the fact that they never made a Battle of Five Armies Lego game.
Oh
It's like,
yeah.
I know it's the weakest movie, whatever, but you didn't finish the dang game, and that drives me crazy to this day. But that's a whole nother thing. I won't get too riled up, I guess. But yeah, I don't. I know the TV show was announced before I started the channel. It was part of the reason that I thought, like, hey, if I'm going to start a Lord of the Rings channel, I should probably get on it, because this TV show is going to come out and people are going to be curious about Lord of the Rings characters.
It started really early on. It was the Twitter feed, if you remember, when they tweeted the maps, and that was literally 3.5 years ago.
And it was
4
even
years?
a bit before then. There were like rumors of an Aragorn series in early 2017. And then they announced it right after I graduated from high school. That shows you how. And that was 5 years ago. That was when they first announced that they were doing.
You're still so young.
Show.
Oh my gosh, you make me feel so old every time we talk.
Sorry, guys.
I mean, that, you know, Matt and I are the parents here.
Right.
But it's been 5 years since they originally announced that they're going to do a show.
It's crazy. Yeah, because we had COVID and they had delays and stuff. Yeah. And that was one of the interesting things, that they told us, that Payne and McKay told us was, they kind of acquired the rights to this without knowing for sure what they were going to do with it. Like, they got they know, okay, we've got The Hobbit, Lord of the Rings, and the appendices, which in a way kind of makes sense, because until you actually have the rights, you can't move the ball too far down the field planning a show or something. But it's also interesting because it's like, okay, we have all these rights. What do you guys want to make? And so there actually were pitches about a young Aragorn show, or film, or whatever it was at the time. I can't remember, but that was actually one of the pitches that they did. And sorry, here we go.
Well, and it's
getting ahead of myself here.
Strange that they were like, we have the rights to The Hobbit, The Lord of the Rings, and the appendices, most of which is in the Third Age. So naturally, let's do the second age.
Let's do the second age. Yeah. Now I've theorized that, I've seen others theorize that they might have more than they're letting on, especially with this new book that was announced, the Fall of Numenor book. Like, there's a little bit of, I wouldn't say reading tea leaves, but like, it raises your eyebrow. Like, okay, is that really all you have? Because, we know from the map, there's like the island of Numenor is described as a star-shaped island, and that's in Unfinished Tales. That's not in the appendices. So, by you making it a star-shaped island, is that indicating something rights-wise? So,
but it makes sense. Look, Matt and I talked about, or did we all of us talk about it? So my idea is, look, a lot of people will go back to, who just start with the movies, right, or with the series now, and they will go back to the books, and then they read the books, and they'll be like, wait a moment, but this is different. This was different. That person was named different. That person had a complete different backstory. That person lived in the beginning of the Second Age and wasn't the last king of Numenor, and like things like that. So I think they don't want that to happen too much,
right?
Because then it's complete fan fiction, right? And I don't think the estate has any interest in that. So they want, to the show at least to be somewhat accurate, so they have to give them some things. That's how I always see it, because
I think
if they have to make up everything,
that makes sense,
right? I think there's more of a symbiotic or fluid relationship there than people look at it like, oh, they only have Lord of the Rings, they only have The Hobbit, that's it, in the appendices, and so like automatically wiping everything else off the board. And I don't think it's that simple. Like, I think there's a lot more to it. So next question from Paige. I would love to see a Queen Baruthiel in animation. She fascinates me as a character.
Literally,
however, I'm not sure if she is in the appendices. Love to lives. Love to lives. I don't know what that means, but love to lives. Love to live streams, maybe? I don't know. Anyway,
Yeah.
so Queen Baruthiel. Helen, I'm going to let you go first on this because I know you're itching to.
I mean, no, because Houston knows I am Queen
Oh, yeah.
Baratheon, you know. I mean, I'm working on the, how many does she have? 11, 12? I always forget how many cats she has, but you know, I'm working
Oh.
on it. I'm on 3. I still need the white spy cat. So no, but you know,
Eyes on
he
the black
literally,
cats. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So everybody who doesn't know, so Queen Beruthiel was an evil Numenorean queen. She actually, you know, allegedly was a black Numenorean, and was married to the king of Gondor. Forgot who. Don't really remember.
Tyrannian or Tyrannon.
Yeah, but then the
And
line
there was
changed
10
because they didn't
cats
have
total.
any. Okay, 10.
Nine black cats, 1 white cat.
See, I'm not that far off, so I'm close. And yeah, the story is so cool, and I love that Tolkien, you know, writes these little weird things like with you for example, Thringwithel, right, the vampire, Beren and Luthien later slay, and these really cool characters we don't know a lot about, very obscure, but they are in the lore. I really like that. But the thing is, they have to make up literally everything because what do we have? Like one sentence about her that she was shipped back to.
I was like that. The end of her story is like the funniest to me. It's just like, all right, we're Gondor's kind of done. See ya. Like, bye bye. We'll ship you back to Umbar and all your cats.
And as we speak, look, they always like to make appearances. So this is Teddy. So she's maybe she could be the white one.
Are you the spy?
Yeah, I was gonna say, which one's the spy? Yeah. Amira says, I think Queen Beruthiel was just misunderstood.
Yeah, I think so too.
Oh man. Well, we've I think that was kind of the highlights of what I had. Oh, and then we talked about Miranda Otto returning as well. So I wanted to get into some of the new images that we have from the Amazon series.
Look at him.
And we're going to start with my favorite because I'm at the controls here. So I guess that's what I'm going to do.
That's my favorite too.
I want old man Celebrimbor. Sorry for saying that, but
I was just saying how I did say that the Shadow of Mordor Celebrimbor is like the definitive in my brain, but yeah, this Gil-galad, I'm still amazed. Like every time I see something new about him, like how much he looks like Mark Ferguson from the Lord of the Rings prologue.
Yeah.
And so when people are like, Elrond has to look different, this is just people theorizing. They say like, oh, Elrond has to have different hair and stuff so that he doesn't look too much like Hugo Weaving. I'm like, look at this guy. Like he's exactly the same. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Like, I kind of had to do a double take. I was like, wow, they got the same actor from the movies.
Right.
That's crazy.
He didn't age.
He did in 20 years.
That's Shawnette says the most important mystery of Rings of Power is what happened to the elf's sideburns. He does not. That's true. He does not have sideburns. No sideburns for Gil-galad, but he does have his mighty eyeglass, and it's beautiful. I love it. So this obviously, we saw it very, very briefly. I think you see it more in stills than anything in the Peter Jackson films. And of course, as soon as this was released, like within an hour, we had the translation. So I'll go ahead and read this off. So what this says is Gil-galad wields a well-made spear. The orc will fear my point of ice. When he sees me, in fear of death, he will know my name, Eyegloss.
Oh, all right. That is sick.
So freaking good.
Awesome.
And it was pointed out, this is actually the same inscription that's in the Peter Jackson films.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's awesome.
Oh, so you learned something. Good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So we taught you something.
It was
Yeah.
worth coming. But how cool is that we have, because the way the weapon speaks to us, right, with the
Mhm.
inscription is very similar, to not that it was inscribed, but you have speaking living things, rings, weapons, right? Like Gurthang, the crew, and stuff like that. So I love that it maybe obviously it doesn't have a complete life of its own, right? But I like that the way it is written, because the spear itself says, "Org,
Yes.
fear me." It's
Yeah.
not the wielder. So I
Right.
really like that they went into this detail.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes me curious too with like how they're going to do this, but what happens to the spear after the fall of Gil-galad?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
See, my first thought was, when is someone gonna make replicas of this
Oh,
beast?
for
Because
real.
that's what I want to know.
And Matt's wife is already, we need a new house for this.
Yeah. Whenever when I get a new sword from United Cutlery, she's like, "Where are you gonna put that one?" I was like, "I'll find a spot."
Yeah. There's always
Find a
more room.
spot.
There's
There's
always more.
always room for more. Um, so yeah, overall, I think Gil-galad is the one whose look I enjoy the most.
Yeah.
I do hope we get to see, I'm sure we will, but see him in other wardrobe than the all gold.
Yeah, I was about to say,
It's
I
it's
actually
not. Yeah, go
I
ahead.
wondered when they released those posters, because that might be the same shot. I can't remember. I just remember all the gold rings and all the gold. I was
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
is this Ar-Pharazôn? Like, this
Yeah.
is very
Right.
gold.
That's who
Yeah.
I thought it was too.
Yeah.
I think it's slightly different. He wasn't
Slightly
holding the spear in that one,
Gotcha.
but yeah, it was very, very similar to this now that you mention it. But yeah, all the
Yeah.
gold rings. I thought for sure that it was Ar-Pharazôn. I was like, oh, it's
Yeah.
Ar-Pharazôn because he's Ar-Pharazôn the Golden.
The
Like
golden,
that's gotta
yeah.
yeah. So when it was revealed it was Gil-galad, I was really surprised. I love the blue and gold combo from the prologue in
Yes.
the Peter
The OG
Jackson film.
movies.
So I hope we get a combination similar to that, because it's just so regal and so, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just
I do
so good.
agree. Oh, sorry, Helen. I was gonna say I do agree with Roak or Katie in the chat. Just it does seem a little gaudy, and maybe this is just what he wears in court. But besides that, like, this isn't his everyday wear. I would kind of expect, that blue gold or maybe some gray, and if he's the son of
feels like an
Fingon,
official something, like we've seen him in the ceremony. Or what appears to be a ceremony shot where he's like crowning people with these crown leaf kind of things. So it makes me wonder if this is like a ceremonial attire of some kind, maybe. But yeah, I'm hoping bring some of the blue. I want the blue. Bring back the blue.
And I wanted to say it, and I see Darth Gandalf, who actually has an epic YouTube channel as well. Shout out to him.
Shout out.
Yeah, he does really good battle videos as well. But he says the Golden House of Enough, and that was what I was thinking then, because I was exactly like you guys thinking, oh, this is Ar-Pharazôn, surely, when you just saw the hands, right? But then I tried to make, because I was like, this doesn't match his personality, right? Because he looks pompous in a way here, right? And he is not. He's wise. He's foresighted. He's a good politician and also an epic warrior. Nothing screams, I want to be dressed in gold.
Right.
So I really, I was thinking about it. Why? Where does that come from? And then, I was thinking the same.
That makes sense. Because if they're going that he's the son of Orodreth, then because I didn't know if they would go maybe the son of Fingon, and then you'd expect more of the grays and the blues, and all of that.
I think son of Orodreth, son of Orodreth is like kind of
that's the accepted one. I would say.
I prefer that.
Yeah. I know there's plenty of debate that line that area of the family tree, that branch has a lot of debate around it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fingers Titan, thanks for setting up the live stream, Matt. It's great listening to Men of the West and Clueless Fangirls thoughts too. It is great listening to them as well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you guys for coming on. So yeah, I think that, you know, the Golden House of Finarfin is a great point, and I think that kind of, you know, leads into that, you know, my kind of hypothesis that this would be a ceremonial thing. Like you're kind of showing off that, you know, the House of Finarfin. This is a ceremony of the High King of the House of Finarfin. You know. So yeah, I'm sure, you know, over the course of a $1 billion TV show, there will probably be more than one outfit per main character.
I'd hope so. That's a good point.
If I had to put my money down. So I don't know if you guys had any in particular quotes from the article on him. I wrote down a couple. I really liked what we got from the actor portraying him. And it spoke to some of the fears that I had, you know, about what might become of the character, because I really, really like Gil-galad as a character. So one such quote, Benjamin Walker, by the way, is the actor. I know we're comparing him to Mark Ferguson. It's not Mark Ferguson. It is Benjamin Walker. They look very similar, but they are not the same. It's almost like he can smell it in the air. He's talking about, you know, the evil returning to Middle Earth. And not only that, he's got this connection with the life force of Middle Earth, almost as if he can feel the tentacles of evil slithering beneath the crust of Middle Earth. And he knows it's there. And so it begs the question, what am I going to do about it?
I like that. And with the lore, how he never trusted Anatar, the Lord of Gifts, like that makes a lot of sense. I'm really hoping that, I remember seeing a while back with Elrond that it was something like he was politically, like Elrond as a character in the show will be politically active or something like that. I'm a little bit worried with these sorts of politicians amongst elves, how they're going to approach that.
Yeah. So he does have a quote. That was another one that I was going to bring up, because that was one thing that I read, and I said I think I said it in a video breakdown or something. You know, I'm not crazy about describing Elrond as an what was it, up and coming politician, or politically ambitious. And I was like, and I think that's bringing in like the baggage that comes with like real world politicians. And
absolutely.
I despise real world politicians. But so Benjamin Walker, I almost called him Mark Ferguson just now. Benjamin Walker had a quote, and he said, let's see here. He's talking about building an infrastructure, allow everyone the possibility to protect themselves. That's what he's trying to do. That's what a good politician does. And that's what I like about him. And he also had a quote of him being the kind of politicians we would like to have, or something like that. Like what we would want our politicians to actually be.
He attempts to bring out the best in all of us. So that when we need to come together, we can. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So there was some really good, you know, quotes relating to that made me wonder, okay, so can that also extend to Elrond? I hope so. That's, you know, when they talk about these characters being politicians, that it's in-world politicians, and, you know, we don't need to, you know, associate that with baggage from our own world.
No.
So that
you want to escape in
you
want to escape in fantasy, not be reminded. No, but
but
what
it's like our politics is why I want to escape this world.
Yeah, exactly.
Like don't give me more of that.
Exactly.
Jeez.
So what I was thinking about when reading that, because in the beginning I was like, this sounds weird. This doesn't sound like Elrond or any one of these guys. But when you actually think of it like Elrond never accepted, because he could have taken up the crown of High King of the Noldor, right? That is his bloodline, and I like, because he never became that, right?
Yeah.
So in a way, you always are like, okay, so either you're a king or you're a politician or you're a priest, right? This is like
Yeah.
the three, or a warrior maybe,
Mm.
right? He was neither of those in a way, but maybe fit more to politician, because I think they will give him also a bit of the role of Galadriel with the dwarfs, because Galadriel was actually the ones being foresighted and thinking, let's be friends with the dwarves of Moria, that will come in handy later. And I think they will give him maybe parts of that storyline. So
Yeah.
he has that wisdom, that foresightfulness, to be friends with a race. We're actually not really cool, after some events with King Thingol. But now we have to stick together and all that. And this is very politicky, right?
Yeah.
This is not just being a king, this is politicking. So I kind of, that was what I like, how he will be portrayed, how I imagine the politicking thing. I don't know.
And I think you touched on Elrond at the end of the Second Age choosing not to take the title of High King of the Noldor. That made me think of, I think between Elrond and Galadriel, there could be some very interesting story arcs in this show. And like this is just a theory, like, of what I think could happen, and it could be totally off base, and it might not be near this cooler. Who knows? Maybe they'll come up with something cooler. But I think we could see an interesting and fairly unique storytelling, in that Galadriel and Elrond are two characters who sound like they are very ambitious and are looking to lead. And I think that, knowing where they end up at the end of this, I think they could have some really big growth moments where they realize what they think is the leadership and the people they want to be is not truly who they want to be. With Galadriel, we're obviously getting a very prideful, is the term in the books. We're getting more of a warrior Galadriel, and I could see her setting that aside and becoming more of a protector instead of an offensive force. And kind of the same with Elrond. He wants to be the next Gil-galad and be High King and everything, and then he kind of pivots and realizes, no, that's I don't need to be a king. I don't need to I don't know, live up to my dad, who is a star,
Literally.
Like I'm
and
gonna
my
do
brother
this thing.
who choose to become a king, right?
Right.
Also,
Speaking of fathers, I'm pretty sure mine actually sent you a super chat there, Matt.
Oh, really? Is it
Bullroar? Yep.
Is Bullroar your dad?
Yes, sir. That's
Really?
I'm pretty sure that's his account. Yep.
I was sitting here waiting, like I was waiting for a pause in the chat. I was sitting here in my chat waiting to pull that up. Well, shout out to Bullroar.
Yeah.
Yoyston's Pop. Any word on the music for Rings of Power?
Howard Shore and Bear
McCreary. Bear McCreary. I think in that last promo, the one with the kid with the ent that's outside the window, I'm not 100% sure, but like my gut kind of tells me that might be some music from the actual show. Like it kind of had a certain, I don't know, Howard Shore-ness to it. I felt.
I'll have to go back and with that mindset and listen for that.
Yeah. Like I don't think necessarily the teaser trailer. I wasn't 100% like I thought that was just kind of like
it was very generic.
Yeah, just kind of like it didn't. But that some of that music that we heard in there, I was like, I could see that being, the title card music or, something. So, or if nothing else, then maybe music from the full trailer that we'll get that supposedly is done, like 3 different versions of.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's what the rumors are. I
You'll
think
see
Fellowship.
it at Comic-Con, pretty sure.
What's that?
Comic-Con?
I think you will see it at Comic-Con. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's where their show is.
I think at this point it's less than 3 weeks away to Comic-Con, so it kind of, I don't think it would make a whole lot of sense to release it before that at this point.
I heard rumors that they would do it during, they're choosing some sporty times too, like the NBA finals. I heard that we might have
I never
I was like, oh, that's
I never
strange.
bought that. I felt the Super Bowl was like, I predicted the Super Bowl like way back in the fall, just because it's the biggest sporting event, arguably the one, it's
international.
A one night.
And it's international. The whole world is watching, right? And like NBA
is at least aware of it. NBA is, it's one, and I think it was one of the lowest rated NBA finals for quite some time. So I don't think that was at any point playing into their wheelhouse. This is a good question. Prime Day trailer. TBX 59 throws out the possibility of Prime Day. That's when
is that?
I want to say it's like the 13th.
Oh, okay.
But maybe they show more behind the scenes or some more like character, because I saw they started the interviews with the cast. You saw some stuff, so maybe they give us more there. I don't know. I mean,
I think the smart money's still probably Comic-Con at this point.
Yeah.
I mean, we know they're having a Hall H presentation, which is the big hall at Comic-Con. I can't imagine that, they're not gonna take that opportunity to, drop a full trailer there. That's my guess.
I will say a lot of their marketing choices have been odd. I mean, they hardly would do anything on like, they did drop some like quotes on Tolkien reading day, but there should have been more. Things like that, just interact more with the fandom, kind of get on everyone's good side more.
I think, and that was, part of the reason I think we were all excited about talking about, what we're talking about tonight. Cause it's like, okay, we've got some, like, these are canon characters we're talking about. What a lovely change of pace.
Absolutely.
Talk about Gil-galad and Celebrimbor. Yes, please. Let's talk about those guys.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And what we were reading in the Nerdist article, I really, as you said, Matt, I really liked, and it fits to the actual character, especially what the actors were saying. And I always like that when the actor understands a character, not wanting to go into Star Wars, but they're literally actors who've never seen a Star Wars movie. I mean, it's okay, but still, I like when they identify and read back and start to learn about that character, because I do think the performance is different then. And them doing all these interviews and talking about the character, they just don't say, oh yes, he likes to wear gold and has a spear, but they can, go in depth a bit more. So I enjoy that.
Well, and they so I think Yoyston, you touched on it earlier, that the relationship between Gil-galad and Elrond is also mentioned in the Nerdist article, and Gil-galad's kind of mentoring him, and his quote here is, he does it in a way a loving parent would, which is to allow him to make his own mistakes or to encourage them to do things and convince them that it was their idea in the first place, which is kind of interesting. Like, I've always thought, especially knowing Elrond's backstory, he the third kinslaying, Eärendil and Elwing, he's separated from his parents, Eärendil and Elwing, and then he's fostered by Maglor and Maithros, and then they disappear at the end of the First Age, and by that point, I mean, Elrond's in his 70s, I think, by the end of the First Age, something like that. So he's a bit older, but still relatively young for an elf. And so he's just like constantly having father figures and parent figures, taken away from him. And Gil-galad is the one who I've always thought makes sense as a parent figure for him. And like, if they do a really good job, like it's one of those things, like I feel is almost a must, like for, as far as, you know, character dynamics, like they've got to get a good relationship between Gil-galad and Elrond, because it will hit so hard when we get to Last Alliance, and you know, what happens there, and Gil-galad meets his end, like that could hit really hard if they establish that relationship well over the preceding seasons.
And you can spin it further, because what I really like, and I want to hear your voice thoughts on this. What do you think? Will we see Círdan? Because before Gil-galad fostering or tutoring Elrond, there was actually somebody mirroring this with Gil-galad himself, which was Círdan. And Círdan could also come into play within the Menorians, because he did teach them a lot, you know. And so do we see, because we haven't had anything, we haven't seen images, and I would love this character, because like Galadriel, he's one of the connecting pieces in all of this, right? He's been everywhere. He's lived through everything. He can tell a story. That beard can tell a story. And I really want, maybe in season 2, I don't think they hold back. But yeah, I would love to, I don't know, to see the Círdan Gil-galad, and then Gil-galad Elrond. And when you imagine Gil-galad dies at the battlefield, at the Battle of the Last Alliance, there's also Círdan losing his. So it's not just Elrond losing his stepfather or foster father, it's Círdan losing his stepson. So a lot of people are grieving for Gil-galad, which is really beautiful in a way.
I mean, you took the thoughts right out of my mind. I was just thinking about Círdan too, and I really hope we see him. He's like, I mean, obviously personally, he's like my second favorite elf, I would say, in the whole Legendarium, but right behind
who's your favorite?
Finrod, everybody's friend.
You're so good. You're way too good. How are we friends?
But yeah, Círdan, like he lost a lot. He stayed behind for Thingol, lost Thingol, found new purpose with helping Gil-galad, lost Gil-galad, and he saw a lot for sure. I don't think that beard was just age, but it was also the sorrow that he had endured. And yeah, since he was right there next to all of them, I really, really hope they do that story right.
So this, I wanted to bring, I was pulling up this guy's photo. So this is Simon Merrill's, who is one of the few actors that we've not had confirmation on who he's playing. And so a lot of people are predicting that he is Círdan. So there you go. So I wanted to give you guys a little visual. So this might be our Círdan.
Yeah, he has a very sharp feature. Could be an elf. I wouldn't be mad about it. Yeah.
Honestly, when I saw his casting, I thought for sure he was going to be Celebrimbor.
That would make more sense.
I honestly thought he was.
Like, they're going a more older route with Celebrimbor, but I would actually reverse those two. I would say Celebrimbor should be a little younger, resembling Feanor, craftsman, and then Círdan should look older, have the gray beard and everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was, let's see here. Let's get a look and see if there's any other quotes we had. Okay, so Benjamin Walker, Gil-galad, there was another quote here. He has to let his own world have a life of its own. He has to let go like a parent does. The ultimate last loving thing is to let them go out on their own and to trust they will do the right thing, and they will know what that thing is.
In giving him Vilya, absolutely.
Yeah, that's a good. That could be some insight into. After the founding of Rivendell and everything. I'm very curious to see how this first season plays out and how much into the War of the Elves and Sauron we get.
Yeah. And last question on him from me to you, because I was wondering, so we know, and they are mentioning the foresightfulness a lot with Gil-galad, right?
Yes.
What was one of his first deeds we learn of? We learn of that he alarmed Aldarion's father, the king of Numenor, I think the fourth king. But who was it? Meneldur? Sorry, it's very late.
Meneldur?
Well, yeah, Aldarion's father. And he alarmed him and said, evil is arising in the east again very, very early on. This doesn't happen. That was in the year, what was it, like 500 or something? So that was very early on that he's aware of the evil. And they mention this in the article that very early on he's alarmed. Do we get a Aldarion or like early Numenorian kings?
I doubt it, because I don't think they have the rights to it. I'm with you, Helen, though.
Yeah.
That would be incredible, but that's all unfinished tales, I want to say. Maybe there's mention of it elsewhere, but definitely unfinished tales.
Yeah, I think, unfortunately, I think that'll be a casualty of the time condensing thing.
Absolutely.
Because it would explain a lot, even the connection with Numenor and why they aided later on in the war with Sauron. So that would make so much sense, to set it up that early on, and the Numenorians, being willing to aid and send troops. Yeah.
So Ben brings up any flashbacks to the First Age would be amazing.
Yeah.
I don't know how much we'll see. We got the still of the two trees,
which I have no idea how they have the rights to that.
Right.
Awesome.
That's another thing that's like, okay, clearly they've worked out something, because
absolutely.
That how they could show the two trees with just having the Hobbit and Lord of the Rings makes no sense. And then the Finrod shot, which is one of the the second to last shot in the teaser, that is presumably from one of the First Age battles.
One of the battles.
Dagor Bragollach.
And didn't we see exactly? I think we saw fire. So Dragonfire.
That would be
Dragonfire or Balrog fire, perhaps. Yeah. Shadow and Flame a little bit.
Yeah.
How do you all feel? Linda K in the chat says the time condensing bothers me the most. How are you all feeling about that? At first, it really bothered me, but the more I think about it, especially with our mannish characters who would just die like flies if we didn't do any kind of time compression, unfortunately. It's bothering me less and less as time. It just feels like it has to be that way. But what do you all think?
Sorry, you can go first, Helen. I don't want to monopolize. I have strong feelings on it, so I'll let Helen go first.
Same. No, well, see, the thing is, the whole story of the downfall of Numenor is mankind failing, right? They were given this promised island, they were given everything. It could have been so great, right? And they effed it up themselves. It wasn't just Sauron. It was themselves, right? I still blame the Valar for that, because they put that island in between worlds. So what do you do there as still being a human? So and I want to see this downfall depicted, and you can't do that and in the year Numenor turned evil. That is very hard to tell. I want to see the debauchery, like they all of a sudden the cities turned dark, they built shrines, they literally had chemists working on finding eternal life and all that. But it was very different in the beginning, right? So I want to see that on screen. So that is my regret, that we probably we get flashbacks or somebody tells the story of the Numenorians. I don't know, but I want that, because this is the essence of the downfall of Numenor. It's not Sauron coming and bringing down the island. That's not true.
Right. They're already well on their way to their downfall. Sauron just nudges them over the edge at that point.
And I want that to be clear, that it's a human fault, right?
Absolutely.
I'm in agreement with with Helen here. So time compression for a long time has been my number one concern.
Yeah.
And I think it's still my number one concern. I find it hard to see how you can as effectively portray the divide between mortality and immortality when you have the same human characters from the premiere episode to the finale. You know, and it's one thing to say like, oh, our lives are shorter, and you know, but to show it, like I want to see it and experience it. So you know, when they said, oh, we'd have to cast new human characters, my reaction was, yes, please do that. Cast new human characters every couple seasons. Like, you know, like do it. You got, like write the checks, cast some new actors, whatever. So, and it's not like a one extreme or another. I saw some comments about like, if, you know, how many seasons if they didn't condense. Like, I'm not saying don't condense at all. I think what I would have liked to have seen is the 5 seasons take place over maybe 3 generations of Numenorians.
Same
maybe
here,
maybe there's a time jump between seasons or something. You know, maybe, you know, like there is, you know, a large gap between when Sauron's defeated in the War of Elves and Sauron, and then there's a time gap, and then you get the fall of Numenor storyline. So maybe there's, you know, between seasons there's a time jump. But even if you don't do it like that, I feel like starting a couple generations back would give you, you know, at least some runway to work with.
I agree, Matt. Like
I think, you know, and I'm not saying, you know, obviously I'll judge it when I see it. Like I've said that.
Oh, for sure.
I had to add that disclaimer on every stream. Like, you know, I can.
Same. Yeah.
I'll say my concern. Like at the end of the day, I'm gonna watch it and then I'll judge it how I see it and see how they execute it. And there's just some things that I'm more doubtful of than others. So yeah, I feel like it's kind of a missed opportunity to see generations of men leave the show and you know their characters die, and for us to like feel that, you know, especially if they got us some, you know, if they got good actors in place and they're likable characters. Like if we did meet you know, Aldarion, you know, we're probably not going to get into that story in the show, but you know, if we met some Numenorian princes and kings that we liked and we're like, hey, this guy's kind of cool. Like if, you know, not even going back far, but Tar Palantir, we're like, hey, this guy's really good. Like he's trying to turn things around. And then like he dies after, you know, a season, and it's like, oh, well, yeah, he just got old. That's what happens to men, you know, they die.
True.
And you need to feel the urgency, right? Of them wanting to find and solve this problem of not dying. You need to feel the urgency. And how do you see it? With them aging and not showing everything happening in 1 year. You need to show them aging and getting frail.
Now they could still show, you know, because Numenorians have a longer lifespan, there's potential, you know, we could see like Ar-Pharazôn in season 1 could be, you know, 40 years difference or, you know, more between when the Fall of Numenor storyline happened. Maybe by the time of Fall of Numenor, he's, you know, well, obviously he should be toward the end of his life. That's kind of what what brings it on. What drives it. So maybe there's some aging, but yeah, I kind of like my default, you know, mindset was kind of, it would be more effective to see actual generations die off.
And Matt, I really like what you said with the with almost having three very different generations, as to also to touch on Helen's point, to see that gradual fall. Like if at, you know, I don't know how they're going to split up time and everything in the 5 seasons, but almost we see one generation with Tar, Aldarion, and everyone then when they were pretty pure coming back to Middle Earth. I would still love to see Elros in the beginning, but I doubt we do. And then we see Tar Ministir and those that came at the end of the War of the Elves and Sauron, those that kind of started to get jealous of the elves a little bit.
Right.
They wanted
Yeah.
to become colonizers and all of that, but they're
Yeah.
still relatively good people
Mhm.
overall. And then the Ar-Pharazôn and all of them,
It's just
Ar-Dinazor.
right. They just drive them off the ledge.
Yeah, 100%.
Well,
But,
and and one of the stories that I've always, and I've said it so many times, people listen are probably sick of me saying it, but I think one of the most compelling stories that, you know, there's really only notes of, and it's like reading between the lines a little bit. But the Haradrim are uniquely positioned because Numenor has port cities along that coast.
Yeah.
Sauron has Mordor right there on the other side. And for a while, Numenor is on their side. They're buddies and they're learning stuff from the Numenorians and they're getting along. The Numenorians learn stuff from the elves, and in turn, they're teaching stuff to the Haradrim. And everything's cool. But then you get these Numenorians who, like Yoisten said, they get a chip on their shoulder. They think they're hot stuff and they get jealous of the elves. And so they start trying to lord over, you know, the peoples of Middle Earth, and being the Haradrim being, you know, obviously a big part of that. And so then, you know, that's an entire people group, a civilization that is fairly untouched and ripe for some original storytelling. And, you know, they're in a unique position caught between Sauron and Numenor. And at some point in their history, both of them would be antagonistic toward them. So like there's just some really good storytelling possibilities, I think, in that region. That time compression, you know, you've kind of got to start it like, okay, so is Numenor already bad? And like they're already.
And I wanted to bring up some of like those live streams that we've joined, like Fellowship of Fans on, and some of the leaks that they've given us. It does seem like, you know, if Galadriel's going to Numenor and she's being afraid of being persecuted as an elf, that we're starting evil. But I'm curious how many flashbacks they give us and all of that sort of stuff. So
so Sean,
And what we
was
always
not on the list, Sean. We were not. This is not on the list of topics.
Oh my god! I'm clueless. This is my name. I have no idea who that is.
Good. That's. Anyway, Helen, you're about to say something.
Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
And what we always forget is, what is this show's name? It's the Rings of Power, right? And that happens in the year 1500 to 1600, right? When the rings are forged. So that's way before Ar-Pharazôn, and that in a way makes me, because a lot of things happen during that time. You have a queen ruling. You could also bring that, you know, queen who's not fit to rule. I have a really cool video with Corey talking about that, the Tolkien professor. Where we talk about why does Tolkien choose these type of female Numenorean rulers who are not interested, who fail at ruling, who are overthrown. That it is a very interesting concept, and that happens during the forging of the rings. So, and this is so sad. So because they need to tell the story of the forging of the rings, we have Celebrimbor here, right? So that is the thing that in a way does make me a bit mad with the time compression. If they don't have that as a flashback and say this didn't happen yesterday, last Saturday he forged the rings, and now we're giving them out, and the ring rates are already starting to turn or whatever. That was the time compression that really worried me, because, you know, former good kings, former good people, they turn it over a time span, and you also need to show that. Didn't we see a quote, Matt? I commented on your tweet about that, where we saw not everything is evil from the beginning. I thought that is also hinting at the ring rates, because the Ring of Power, there are other, you know, forces here, the ring rates and the rings and the forging of the rings, and we haven't. So when is that happening?
Right. Yeah. And I will. So I don't want to completely. I'm messing around with our last super chat there. Like, I won't completely ignore the Meteor Man thing. I will say, like. So we've heard that Meteor Man is not Sauron, according to rumors from
Good.
Fellowship of Fans.
Yeah.
Which like was the one that I thought made sense.
Yeah,
for it
honestly.
to be, because I honestly thought like, okay, Sauron, we know from context in the first age, like that he can create illusions. Like I'm blanking on the guy's name. He was a soldier with Barahir, Baron's dad.
He gave him the
Gorlin.
vision of the wife.
Gorlin.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who he made a vision of the guy's wife so
Yeah.
that he thinks that she's captured. And so he can, you know, he can obviously shape shift himself. He's, you know, it's at one time you know, turns into a vampire and flies away, and you know, all kinds of crazy stuff in the first age.
He was a cat once.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that was in like an earlier. Was it Telvido? Tevildo, yeah. So yeah, so that to me, like I thought when I saw Meteor Man, I was like, okay, so if I'm thinking about this generously, like maybe it's Sauron creating this illusion, and then he says, "Oh, I have come from the sky, and I am sent by the Valar," and blah blah blah. You know, and it would play into that thing. Like
that's
that kinda,
honestly the best
right?
explanation that I've heard about it. Because when I think about it for too long, my mind begins to implode. Because like, which Valar would have sent him? Like, where was he before?
Yeah.
Like before this, all of these things kind of pop into question. But if Sauron isn't this character that Fellowship of Fans is named Adar, or something like that, like I am not sure who the villain's gonna be here in this first. I've heard
isn't that one of Galadriel's brothers, and they don't name him or something like that? Did I miss?
And that's what I'm wondering. Like, if they take Finrod, who I said earlier is my favorite character and or favorite elf, and they make him this evil character, that's it. I would lose it. But
I want to see that.
Oh no, you don't.
Oh my god! By the way, Darth Gandalf settled it. Meteor Man is Lobelia Sackville Baggins.
Oh, there it is.
Okay, so that's the only one that makes sense. But
yeah, and we saw all the spoons in the promotion pictures. It makes sense. It's Lobelia.
These are the things though that do give me a little bit of worry with the show. Is like when they're kind of using these more generic fantasy tropes without knowing that, like, you know, Manway's the Lord of the Skies. Did he send this person, you know, flying through the sky? Probably not.
And is it coming? You know, is it coming through the sky, or is it like, is this descending from, you know, beyond, like outside of Ea? Like,
is it like a catapult that launched really far?
is he part of the traveling? Is he part of the traveling circus of Harfoots?
Oh my
and they
god!
Did
I told somebody I would mention Harfoots for you,
launch.
just
I
to
saw
trigger
someone,
you.
I saw someone asked if the Harfoots would deliver the Rings of Power, and I meant to bring it up on screen so I could roll my eyes.
So
they
Matt,
know.
I was gonna say,
audience knows that.
It's even leaked over. Like, I've heard some of your thoughts about the Harfoots, but it's even leaked over into like other live streams that I've done where it's like,
really?
Matt would be upset right now. I'm like, I've got to ask him about this.
No, I just so one of the things, like early on, even before anything was released, like this was early. I said, gosh, I hope they don't you know, sorry, there's spammers in the chat. Yeah, well, they'll
Angel's got it.
Angel's on top of it. So one of my early thoughts was, well, I hope they don't, you know, force hobbits into it because they're the accessible, you know, everyman audience surrogate thing, and then like verbatim, you know, they said like, we're the Harfoots and we're the everyman. I'm like, son of a...
Let me listen to that.
Yeah. They're like, we're gonna do the opposite of what this guy said.
I think
So my thing is, like, I feel like it's an unnecessary crutch because
sure.
you know, and we've already had the tales of the unlikely hero hobbits, and I made this point in my hopes and fears video, like there's only so many times you can use the unlikely heroes before they become the likely heroes, you know.
That's a great point.
And so, you know, I hope that their role in the show is small and that they don't make too big of a footprint in the overall story, because then it raises the question of, you know, why would Sauron, you know, not know or not bother with them if they were delivering rings of power, you know, for example of what Flavio threw out here.
And I want Gandalf to be the one to discover that, right? Gandalf should be the one to discover this, you know, secret to defeat evil is not always, you know, to have the best warrior on the field. And I want that role for Gandalf. I don't want it to happen here.
Yeah. That makes sense. I entirely agree. I've seen other stories, like in the Lord of the Rings Online, they presented the ancestors of the hobbits that they named like the whole Bitlan, just like the Rohirrim did at the end of the Second Age, so that those hobbit characters, when they were there, would like make sense and stuff, the player characters. But I've seen them kind of used well. I mean, we don't know when the first exact hobbit, right, the origins of the hobbit work well, just to play devil's advocate a little bit. But I agree that point, that if you overuse the unlikely heroes, then they become the likely heroes. And
and I don't think it's not like that I hate hobbits or anything, you know, or like
for sure.
or like that you know, that that they couldn't, you know, in the history of Middle Earth, you know, like that they couldn't feasibly be around. Like they could totally feasibly be around, but like the point is, the point is that it's not their story. So I was actually, you know, when the show was announced, I was excited because it was like, okay, we're gonna get you know, more dwarves and more elves, and we're gonna get Numenor and like, you know, these other civilizations. So to be using screen time, you know, what is, you know, what I assume, you know, limited screen time, we're going to dedicate a large chunk of that to ancient hobbits. I'm kind of like, but do we have to? Like, you know, so if
agree.
And like I kind of wonder now, you know, this is the first time I've really thought about it, but gosh, if they're around for all 5 seasons, I feel like even that would be way too much. Unless they're just a very, very small part.
Well, and
that's what Lenny Henry said. I think he said we're not playing a big part in one of his first interviews.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I kind of hope so too. I mean, I can't remember. I said this a while back in some podcast or live stream, but the Second Age presents some really dark moments, right? You have Celebrimbor being strung up as a banner, his corpse. And it's like, if hobbits are in the world and an adversary of Sauron, I'll be honest, I don't want to see Sauron going through just wrecking hobbits. Like that would be pretty rough for everybody watching.
That's the exact hypothesis I put forward on one of my previous streams.
Oh, really?
Yeah, people started spamming death to hobbits in my chat, and I was like, this is getting dark. Yeah. I was like, yeah, I was just throwing out an idea. I was like, hey, maybe, I was like, you never know. Maybe Sauron is going to find these guys and, you know, brutally slaughter a bunch of hobbits. Who knows?
There's another game called Lord of the Rings Conquest, and they have they have that evil campaign where Sauron gets the ring back, and that literally can happen. He comes back to the Shire, and you're just wiping out hobbits. It's like, oh, this is awful, but still, for some reason, it's still kind of fun. But this is awful. So I don't.
Super sticker, Mighty Mim. That's a character I need to do a video on. Mim, the petty dwarves.
No justice for dwarves.
Celebrimbor gets crucified. Next scene is immediately in Hobbiton with peaceful Hobbit music. Oh man, got to bring in the comic relief, I guess. So speaking of Celebrimbor, our
real fast before we transition. My dad texts me, who's still watching. Shout out to my dad. He said, I was thinking maybe Meteor Man is Eärendil, who was having problems. Like the ship was having some problems.
Think he needs repairs.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Gil-galad is in some spaceship in Star Wars. It's like a connection.
It always so the meteor makes me think of in the second Guardians of the Galaxy where Ego comes riding in on the spaceship and he's like waving and he's like standing on top of it. Like that's what makes me think of the guy. Like, can you imagine if we see the top of the meteor and the guy's like riding on it?
Yeah,
waving. He's waving, and that's why Gil-galad's looking up like, what?
Yeah. Oh, this isn't good. Yeah.
Yeah. Man. See, this is good. Like we're throwing out things, people think that some of these
Somebody
ideas
make
are
that
rough.
happen.
Like
Yeah.
we can make it even rougher. So
yeah, the show will be
All
good
right.
by comparison to what we're saying.
yeah. All right. So the other article we got was on Celebrimbor.
Old man
And-
Celebrimbor.
Like I said, I'm still in the camp of Shadow of War. The look of the Shadow of War one. I feel like he looks
guess
like
we don't-
Feanor's grandson in that.
Yeah, so I guess we don't get the version of him being into Galadriel here.
I certainly hope not. 'cause
That's a
that would
great
be-
point. That is a fantastic point.
I think they're leaving that behind, which is honestly, that's kind of surprising that Hollywood is
True.
passing up
If
the
they-
opportunity for a love triangle.
Mhm.
Unless they're gonna pull, since she's going to Numenor, pull Elendil into a love triangle, which
Oh gosh.
please no. But you're right. It's a perfect opportunity here, and they're just passing it up.
Yeah. So like I'm not gonna complain about not having a love triangle. Like I'm,
Yeah.
I still have PTSD from the last Middle Earth love triangle.
Oh yeah.
So let's
Yeah.
I just think, why does it hurt so much?
It's because it was real.
Because it was real. It was a real love triangle.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Mm.
Okay, so anyway, we'll go on to Celebrimbor here. So Charles Edwards is the actor playing him, which I've heard, so like I said, I much prefer the Shadow of Mordor look. But I have heard a lot of people say they really like this actor in other things and are excited. So I've never actually seen him in anything, but I've heard a lot of people that are excited about him and his acting. So he had some really good quotes. So he talks about Celebrimbor encouraging Elrond to visit Khazad-dûm, which we have nope, wrong way. There we go. We have an image of the two of them, and talks about the relationship between the dwarves and elves and how they neither race would have produced the wonders they had without the aid of the other. So that kind of hints at
that friendship.
The doors of Durin. Maybe we get to see Narvi, the dwarf.
Yay!
That would be really cool. And that he has a great respect for the dwarves. I did think, when we got this picture, I was like, what is this conversation like? Celebrimbor being the grandson of Feanor, like, and then we have Elrond, whose childhood was totally wrecked by the family of Feanor.
That's a great point.
Yeah,
it's like,
and I mean, they are related in a way. You have to
Yeah.
see it like that, right? They are all very close-ish, but for elves, yes, who live very long lives, related. And I like that Elrond looks very skeptical, and I hope he keeps that skepsis, right? Because the way they say what you just said, Matt, right? He has ulterior motives sending him there, which is really cool. So I don't want him to be a goody-goody. I really want that version of Celebrimbor. Sadly, I think we don't get it because there's a version of him where he rebelled against Galadriel. So in that version, Galadriel and Celegorm actually founded Eregion, and then Celebrimbor and the Gwaith Myrdain, so the guildsmith, the smithing guild.
Yeah, the Gwaith Myrdain.
Myrdain,
Yeah, so they rebel against Galadriel, drive in a way Galadriel out. She leaves her husband there to keep an eye on Celebrimbor, the new ruler of Eregion. I like that because you could do the version of, Sauron influencing him to do that. Galadriel has to flee, but I don't think we have time to tell that story with Galadriel because apparently she's just on the hunt for Sauron.
Oh,
But I would
Interesting.
love to
Yeah.
see that, because this makes
Yeah.
finally elves
Yeah.
fighting with each other and not trusting each other,
Right.
not
Yeah.
working with each other, and setting up kingdoms against each other. Eregion
Mhm.
versus Lyndon, right?
Mhm.
Because we know, Lyndon, Gil-galad shuts the doors in Sauron's Anatar's face, basically, never trusts him.
Mhm.
And well, Celebrimbor, due to his heritage, does, and opens the doors and listens. And Ligwaith and Myrdain, they learn a lot from him. And I want to see
Mhm.
that elves being set up against each other.
Yeah.
I like that too, especially for the resolution that could be provided from that, as
Mhm.
Elrond is sent as the general of Gil-galad's armies to save
Yeah.
Celebrimbor, to where if
Yeah.
they strife against each other, but then at the end of the day they're still kin, and
Right.
they have to save one another.
Yeah.
That would be really, that'd be
Yeah,
profound.
and it kind of, it makes sense that, it's not all kumbaya after the
Mhm.
first age
No.
either,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
there's still some residual, like it
Mhm.
obviously goes back to the genius of Tolkien. He knows, they've had all kinds of, battles of, three kinslings, for crying out loud.
Yep.
Kinslaying, sorry, not kingslayings, kinslayings. Probably more than three kings slayed during the first age.
For sure.
But we've had all this elf on elf violence, so to speak, and that those relationships and those hard feelings don't just disappear. And so the second age is kind of a chance for the elves to get to the point where they are in the third age, where for the most part they work together, maybe not so much Thranduil, he's kind of off doing his own thing, but Sindar wouldn't being what they are, I will bring up this is a great comment, so I had to bring it up. Seeing the light leave Matt's eyes when Elendil love triangle was brought up was priceless.
Oh, yep. Yeah, that would be awful.
Oh my gosh. So yeah, I'm very curious, what this conversation might be like, and to see how much of that, first age sandbox they're able to play in, not necessarily depicting first age events, but knowing what we know about the first age, how these relationships could be affected, and what dynamics might be in play. It'll be very, very interesting. Another quote from Edwards, he says, he's cautious, Celebrimbor here. He can be quite gullible, which I thought was like the understatement. Like, spoiler alert, he's pretty gullible. He's vain. He's a brilliant craftsman. He's very meticulous. He can be a bit of a user, but he can also be used. He's proud. He prefers seclusion. He's not a people person. He is not terribly socially interested. He can be quite blunt. He's very ambitious, colossally ambitious. And I absolutely love this quote, because I feel like it is exactly what I would want and think of Celebrimbor to be. Like, I feel like he is, he's Feanor's grandson.
This would all fit to Feanor. All of what you said
Absolutely.
would fit to Feanor. Him going to, his fortress, then later on he likes, Melkor. They want to be left alone, being secluded and all that. It fits perfectly to Feanor as well, which cool.
Yeah. I was thinking the same thing, Helen. Like, it's Feanor and Melkor were interesting foils to one another, but Celebrimbor definitely carries some of that with him. And it is interesting which characters did have children and did not have children during the Second Age. Gil-galad being one of the most important elves of the age, and doesn't have an heir. And then also Celebrimbor, to some degree, the last Feanorian does not have any children, and is interesting.
And Tolkien tells you something. If a line dies out, that means something. They've done something wrong. Most of the time. So
Well, according to Of Gondor, the line of Feanor did nothing wrong. I don't know about that.
Don't get Helen started. No.
I agree. And Lexi does, by
You know
the
who
way,
would
as well.
disagree with
Oh,
you
of
is
course.
this guy.
Yeah,
right
I was
here.
gonna say
This guy right here.
Hmm.
Speaking of which, I don't know if you guys heard this, but I mentioned this in my Hopes and Fears video, but they told us that Robert Aramaio, who plays Elrond, was the biggest Tolkien nerd on set.
Oh, let's go.
Ooh.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. So I'm always interested to hear that, you know, like I love the stories of Ian McKellen, like having the book on set
Yeah.
and like
Yeah.
drawing attention to small details, like, oh, it says, you know, that you do this, you know, tells Sam like you're supposed to grab Frodo's hand when he wakes up. You know, that was one example from the appendices. So I'm curious if there's any similar stories of that.
But I mean, the
Oh, that's
coolest
great.
thing is Christopher Lee literally teaching
yeah.
them what Tolkien
Right.
actually, what, you know, I
Yeah.
mean, can't be that.
Oh my gosh. I love, like, everyone I've talked to associated with those films has a Christopher Lee story, at least one
Yeah.
Christopher Lee story.
Yeah.
And
And he met him in real life. He's the
Right,
only one
yeah.
of them who met him, which is so cool. I mean,
Which
that man is
I read
epic.
is they pretty much just like ran into each other at a pub or something. I
Yeah.
think.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
what it was. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, still very cool. So again, a little bit more on Celebrimbor. He's reached a point in our story in his existence where he is starting to doubt himself. And I think what drives him is a manic, obsessive desire to create. Above and beyond what he has already created, he wants to surpass all that has gone before. And because he's reached this juncture, he starts to doubt himself and his validity. He lives in a very long shadow of an ancestor, shall we say, whose achievements were considerable. And he has always wanted to try and eclipse that. Some would say he's already done that, but he doesn't believe that he has. So, elephant in the room, they're talking about Feanor there.
Yeah.
Needless to say.
Yeah, not Curufin.
Yeah, and I again, I love this description because I've always, you know, thought, you know, there's obviously multiple reasons why he would fall for the Rings of Power thing, but
yeah.
you know,
that's a great point. Like,
yeah, your grandfather created the Silmarils, you know, and like, how do you compete with that? Well, like, how about some magic rings that allow you to postpone the decays of the world?
Yeah.
Like, that's not
Pretty
nothing,
good.
you know, that's pretty good.
Yeah, he said, well, you know, they fought the War of the Jewels over his stuff, so maybe they'll fight a couple wars over mine.
Right. Yeah. And they do. Yeah, they fight some more wars.
I want to go down in history.
Yeah. But that's a great description of him, and I like that that is a driving force for that. Absolutely, kind of this imposter syndrome of, oh, I've got a lot to live up to, but a lot to turn against because my father and my uncles weren't all great people. So yeah, that's really good. Yeah. That's a really good thing.
Yeah.
Well, according to Helen, her father, you know, his father and uncles did nothing wrong, apparently.
So. Oh yeah, come on, Helen.
Which #fact. I mean, let's not argue about that. But you know, and it also makes, you know, the urge of him, because he doesn't have a kingdom right from the get go, right? He, like Eregion, is comes up later on, right? So he must be like, but wait, I'm Feanor, who is actually, you know, he should have inherited. Well, he did, but he died literally stepping in Middle Earth pretty early on. But he's like, he should be the heir of everything, right? He should be the High King of the Noldor. Like,
that's true. Got a chip on his shoulder about that for sure.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then he sees, you know, all these other people setting up, like Gil-galad being one of the most successful rulers, one of the longest rulers, and he's like, where's my share of the cake? They could also portray that, maybe.
That's that's a great point. It also brings up, I mean, I know King Amdir of Lothlorien or Lindoranand and Orifer, like, they don't quite agree with Gil-galad either, and that leads to some struggles during the war. The last
yes.
Some struggle,
some struggle
leads
for
to
sure.
the dead marshes.
Yeah. So
#no more.
Yeah, that there is some politics that they could totally play with there, of like, why would some people not follow Gil-galad, including Celebrimbor?
Yeah, I mean, you think it's kind of crazy, you know, Gil-galad's a fair amount down the chain of succession here for High King when Celebrimbor is only one generation removed from, you know, his
True.
uncle passing up the
Yeah.
High Kingship, giving it up
That's a
to
great point.
Fingon. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he has a bit of a chip on his shoulder that, you know, why couldn't he be in charge of all the elves? So he goes and starts up his own little sandbox to play in.
Yeah, from his point of view, it's really interesting. I have so much to live up to, and wow. I'm glad that the actor sees it like he does. That's amazing.
Yeah,
yes. Yeah.
So like, yeah, I mean, obviously, you know, these are actor quotes, and you know, like no actor is gonna say like, yeah, you know, this it just didn't turn out very good, you know.
True. Yeah, nothing to say.
I think, but I think, you know, there's a certain measure of encouragement that I take away from quotes like this. Like I think you said earlier, Yoyston, you know, it's not like these actors are saying, oh yeah, my, you know, my character's Gil-galad and he likes gold and he has this big spear, it's really cool. Like these are quotes from two very important characters in this story, in my opinion, that seem to really get and encompass what the characters should be from a canon perspective.
Absolutely. And that they don't need all of the rights to all of the canon to really get into those characters and to do them justice. So that's really encouraging. This is, to be honest, this is like very welcome.
Yeah,
encouraging news.
It's honestly, you know, like I was really pumped. I was like, this is 2 articles in a row that are like, like, yay, thumbs up. Like, has this happened yet? I don't think it has. Like 2 things in a row.
We know why. It's because they're talking about elves. Let's all agree.
I see. So if it was Durin coming out, Helen would have a couple words to say about that.
But we've not seen hardly anything of Numenor though.
True.
Like we've seen scenery. Like we've seen the statue of Eärendil and the port, but that's really it. Like no characters or anything.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. Like I do wonder if they might be leading up to that. I don't know. Maybe that's next week. Maybe we'll get some articles on Numenorians.
That'd be awesome. I hope we see them a lot. I'm kind of afraid that we won't for some reason. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, eventually we'll see them a lot because you know, you've got to have some you've got to have some level of investment in them before they, you know, go for a really deep swim.
Yeah, absolutely. But if they're following Galadriel and she's going to Numenor, I wonder if they're going to use her as kind of like, we're going to see through her eyes.
Okay.
I wonder. That's kind of what my heart tells me a little bit, but we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, I hope it's not, you know, it's always tricky with TV shows, like how long things get drug out in TV shows. Like I hope that the whole Galadriel and Numenor thing doesn't take too long. It's like, no, she needs to get back to where the elves are. Like, let's do
there's gonna be a big war there.
Like if we need to like do this to introduce something or like to establish some kind of payoff that's coming, you know, later, like, okay, let's do that. But like, I hope it's not like half the season Galadriel's in Numenor or something like that. Yeah.
Well, and it could be that it's flashbacks. It could be that there is a time jump of sorts, but that in season 1 we have an Elendil and a Isildur cast, and maybe even an Ar-Pharazôn. But then we also have Celebrimbor, all within the same season. I'm curious how big this time compression is going to be, how radical.
Yeah. I have a feeling it's going to like one of the theories that I've heard and seen is that they might, like the War of the Elves and Sauron, when Sauron is defeated there, that he would be taken back to Numenor as prisoner immediately after that.
That makes sense.
Which I think, because otherwise, you know, why else would you have condensed this time? Like if there's going to be separation between those events, that, you know, you've kind of negated the reason that you're condensing I guess, or you're
Totally.
yeah,
Totally.
you're creating more storyline than is really necessary. You're creating a whole extra battle and stuff.
Yeah.
When Numenor, the whole thing is like Numenor comes, Sauron gets captured and taken back. Well, let's, combine
But
these
it
two
would
things.
show the power and foreshadow the power of Numenor, and then make the fall even greater. Because you think, the biggest armies, well, obviously elves might have one of the biggest armies, and then also Sauron with his minions. But it's cool because they actually, I still think he, in a way, wanted to be defeated, but let's not argue about that.
Yeah. I think
to show their strength.
I hope that comes across, like that Sauron, his manipulativeness, if that's a word.
Yeah.
Whispering in the king's ear.
Yeah, I want to see him be manipulative, and like I feel like Sauron in the Second Age is like at times playing chess when everyone else is playing checkers. With the creation of the rings and the downfall in Numenor. It's like, our Farazan comes and captures Sauron, and he is riding high like, I am, the king of men and lord of the earth, and like, I'm so great, I captured a Maiar, and all the while, he's just playing right into Sauron's hands.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
So there's another quote. I had one more quote from Celebrimbor here, from Charles Edwards. This was about like the show in general, which I thought was a really interesting quote to bring up. That I was going to get your guys' reactions to. Excuse me. He says, I think in both instances and in any adaptation of Tolkien, the vital element is to get the tone right. The moment we stray, or anyone strays from that, that's when it becomes false. And I know for certain that simply doesn't happen here. That's out of the question in our series. We've achieved that tone.
I think, I would say that generally speaking, in any sort of adaptation, especially with Tolkien, if you can get the feeling, the themes of Tolkien and the themes of Middle Earth at large right, then other things are much more forgivable. But it's crucial, either that is it is or it isn't sort of thing. And if it comes in and this just does not feel like Middle Earth, everything will feel off.
Oh yeah, it'll fall apart.
Absolutely.
Honestly, if it doesn't.
Absolutely.
So yeah, and like I said earlier, no actor is going to go in and be like, yeah, we kind of botched this first season, hopefully the next season
before it even comes out.
But that being said, like I feel like there's also a measure of, you can kind of get a sense, when actors know that they're in something terrible, like there's less, passion and stuff in their voices. So, again, taking it with the grain of salt that, like, these are people trying to convince us that the show is going to be really good. But quotes like this make me think like, okay, they had these things in mind when they were making this show.
Yeah.
Hopefully that comes across,
Yeah. Helen, what do you think? Do you think the tone is the most important thing, or?
Well, what is the tone, right? If you talk about the inheritance of the movies, that's a very different. That's looks, that's music. If you talk about the books, the tone of the books, that's different. That's we want to be at least. So it's very different because the movies didn't fully obviously capture the tone of the books, which is fine. And for me, they are two different. And this is what I always say when people come at me, when I'm like, oh, I'm excited for the show still, because it's two different things. It's not the books. This won't be canon for me. The books are canon for me, right? So I think it's in the image of the movies, but they want, because what I understood, one of the showrunners read everything he knew. Apparently, the story of Aldarion and Erendes, the mariner's wife, which props if you know that. So I do think they want to like mix this in together, like
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a great point. There definitely is a bit of a different feel with different adaptations, but
yeah,
that's where I guess maybe tone isn't the word I would use. I would use theme.
yeah.
I would use theme.
Theme,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah. That's what I
Yeah.
said with the Numenor thing, right? They need to capture the essence of this. Oh my God, we don't want to die. What can we do? Let's become
Yeah.
evil. You know what I mean? So this is a theme. This isn't a tone. And I think if they understand these topics and these themes, then it can be a good show, even though they don't have every right. But we always have to keep in mind this is not completely canon, and it never will be. It's a show. It's moving images. It's not a book.
Yeah. Well, and especially one that, there's not a lot written on. The Second Age, there's very few instances of dialogue happening in the Second
Yeah.
Age. And that was one thing that I was, I kind of think back to when it comes to the Middle Earth films that we've got so far, the Peter Jackson films. I feel like, especially in the Hobbit films, you can tell when they leave the Tolkien, when they run out of Tolkien words to translate to screen, like
that's a great point.
You can tell, and
Some of the names.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is Josh and Celebrimbor. It's like, okay.
Yeah, right. So that part of me is a little, that part of me is always, that aspect has always made me a little bit nervous, because there's so few dialogue portions to pull from for the Second Age. So will the language sound like
absolutely
what they, how they talk and everything? Because you hear so many direct book quotes in those Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings films, and it's like, yes,
feels right.
It feels right, even when it's, and I know there was some rumors that Fellowship had reported on about Christopher Tolkien didn't like borrowing from one character to give lines to another. That was actually one of my favorite parts of the Peter Jackson films. Was like, because I look at it from, okay, well, if we need more lines of dialogue for this character, would I rather make something up or, borrow from Tolkien? Like, I'm going to go with the Tolkien, give me all of Tolkien's words as possible. But
and it's the same with George R. Martin with a Song of Ice and Fire, Game of Thrones, right? You saw when there were no more books to draw from, and to get the ideas from, the show went west. I mean, there are other reasons, obviously, but still, it's a thing. So why was the first and second and whatever season so good? Because it's literally what dialogues from the books and the books. So yeah.
Absolutely.
You've got a oh no,
up a poll. So we'll do there's some requests for an additional option here, so I'm adding the additional option.
Nerd mood. That's really good.
So
that's
so
really
we've
good.
Got...
like it.
All right, so I just relaunched it with Nerd Moot as one of the options. So you guys let me know. So I'm toying with the idea of trying to do live streams on a weekly basis to cover all Tolkien news and various subjects and guests and everything. So let me already 75% so far is on Nerd Moot. I really like Nerd Moot. Wow.
Ryan Garcia, the nerdening of the Shire.
I spent all this time trying to think of names, and then you guys just bust out Nerd Moot. Like,
that's so good
right there. It is. It's great. So I love it. Okay, sorry. All right. Let's see here. I think that's all the quotes. Oh, and then there was only one other quote that I had highlighted from Charles Edwards. He basically just talked about when he walked on the set, he was astonished to see the forge and all the extraordinary antiquities around the
Ooh,
place.
That's
So
awesome.
as soon as I heard
Nice.
Galadriel's Celebrimbor's forge, I was, because that's long been one of the things that I've been like, man, can they
Yes.
just release a promo image
Yeah.
of Celebrimbor's forge? Like, he doesn't even have to be there. Just
Just
give
the
me
forge.
something. Yeah,
The
just show me the
anvil, yeah.
forge with his hammer or something.
And I want to get to know, the other members of the Gwaith and Myrdain, and them being also very ambitious. They are Noldor, right? I want to see real, true Noldor, forging things, and I like that. Interested what kind of actors they will have for that.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
good point. I hadn't really thought much about the Gwaithie Myrdain, but that's it's a team. It's a team effort.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Do we have? I think that's all the images that we had. Oh, I did have some folks in my Discord wondering what this instrument is back here. Do you guys have any theories?
Is that a telescope? Like,
I think it's a meteor spotting device.
Oh, yes.
Oh my
It's for
God.
tracking. It's for tracking comets and meteors. Those kind of things.
That got
That's
me.
what
That was good. Oh.
And then my Discord's a wonderful place where people like really like to pour into the background stuff. So they were wondering like what kind of pastry this was,
It looks good.
Yeah.
Hungry.
Yeah, I'm very curious what this conversation is right here though, because there could be a lot of baggage in this conversation.
Yes.
Yeah, they don't look particularly happy with each other, but
Yep. Don't trust him, Elrond.
yeah.
He's got
Elven
ulterior
cheese.
motives.
Yeah.
Well, and then we haven't even talked about, so we can touch on this real quick. We'll wrap up here soon. We've been going for a couple hours. Wow, it went by really fast.
Yeah.
So just real quick, I was going to ask you guys about, I know Yoyston, you're big into Lotro. Helen, I'm not sure what your gaming repartee is like, but we've got 2 video games coming out. We've got the Gollum game and a Return to Moria game. Are either of you pumped or have any thoughts on either of those games?
Helen, do you want to start?
No, you.
Oh, okay. So with Gollum, I want to get excited about it, but ever since they announced it, I'm like, okay, this could be a really interesting character piece. You make choices as Gollum or Smeagol. Maybe it's very character psychologically driven. This could be a great exploration of that, as well as like his journeys and everything. But I'm not convinced on the point of it, the thesis of it yet. However, Return to Moria, I've played a lot of different survival games with my friends. And to be honest, of all 4 projects coming with Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power, War of the Rohirrim, all of that, I'm most excited for this game, actually. I would say more than the Rings of Power. I am so excited because it kind of came out of nowhere. Corey Olsen's working on it, Tolkien professor, and just like an 8-person adventurer as dwarves through Moria, and you're building it. Like, I feel like I'll just get so much enjoyment. I just already can tell it'll be so good with like a lot of the friends that I already want to play it with. And, I'm just very excited.
Open world. Is it open world?
I think it's open Moria world. It's like, I think you can just go through Khazad-dûm, and maybe that'd be cool if you could go outside both gates and kind of see Dimril Dale or see Eregion. But I'm so excited for it. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm very intrigued by that. I honestly, when the first preview came out, I thought for sure that it was just like another mobile game.
Yeah.
Because, I've seen so many random mobile game. I can't even remember what the name of the one is. And they're like the pay to win, and
I'm not as interested in.
They're very repetitive, and there's no real end to it. Like, there's no story, there's no like real achievement there, and I just have never been able to get into those kind of games. But then when I heard it, oh no, this is something different, it's a survival game, and then Corey Olsen is consulting on it, I was like, okay, you've got my attention. It's in the 4th age. Like, oh yeah, okay, now you've really got my attention.
Yeah.
Vertical View says we should stream playing the One Ring, like the the RPG game, right?
They're
Yeah.
maybe it's an RPG. There's a real-time strategy game that
Maybe
came
that's what
out.
I'm thinking of. I have
Yeah.
it in a box.
Oh yeah, I grew up playing that game with
Yeah, I
my
have
brother
it
and my
somewhere.
dad, and that was fun. It's
Yeah.
like the old Warcraft games from the
cool.
late 90s. Yep.
What's happening, Matt?
Dev Thompson, did you see the newish article with the speech coordinator in it? They said they're making new languages for the show. Hurt my brain. There already is languages. Don't need new ones. Also, hi. I did not. I don't recall that one. Do you guys?
I heard something about that they had to create. I didn't look too much into it, to be honest, but that they might have to. I mean, granted, Neo Sindarin, like they do. You do have to create a couple things, but
right, yeah. So
I think that's more about the Eastern ones. That would be my guess.
Yeah.
Oh, so for like Easterlings,
Haradrim,
okay, yeah, that would make sense. I think a lot of people don't realize how much created language is in like the Peter Jackson film. You know, we've got the Neo Khuzdul, for example. Like, there's very, very little actual Khuzdul written by Tolkien. We've got Baruch Kazad Imenu is like almost the extent of the dwarven language.
That's all we need.
Which, I mean, it's very, you know, I mean, what situation can't you just use a battle cry for, you know?
Absolutely. So quick correction. I was thinking of the War of the Ring game. That was a
okay.
He was talking about a tabletop RPG, which
okay. That's what I was thinking. Yeah. Because I do have that. It's still sealed. I haven't opened it up yet.
Oh wow.
Because I'm very new to the whole tabletop RPG thing. So I need I need some hand holding in order to make that a reality. But sometime we will do some very wonderfully nerdy stuff. I also got so I got a new game from Games Workshop.
Ooh.
So they were kind enough to send me this. So guys, we might have a future game session, the Battle of Pelennor Fields. So yeah, I just got this in the mail the other day.
Cool.
I've had a lot of people asking me to do gaming stuff here on the channel. So we might have to do that, rig that up somehow. So so Yoistin, you said the Gollum game, but you're most excited of the 4 projects for Moria. Helen, what's your excitement level with the 2 video games? Do you do much gaming?
Yeah, I do. Still want to get my new PlayStation. But
nice.
Yeah, well, I'm most likely be busy changing diapers in 2-3 months.
Right.
But the thing is, so I love the Moria idea. I think that's a cool game. Gollum, no, I'm still waiting for my baddie centric game. You know, explore Mordor with Sauron. I'm still waiting for that. Please, somebody make that happen. Thank you very much.
That would be kind of sweet, honestly.
Yeah,
I know.
I'm still waiting for a open world RPG Middle Earth game, like a big, you know, we've got the Shadow games, which are great. But I want to see more than just Mordor. Like, I want to be able to go the whole map. I want to go everywhere, you know, kind of like Lotro. I mean, Lotro's great too.
But almost like a Skyrim esque like game for
exactly. Yes. All right. Well, I think that will wrap it up. You guys have been on here a long time. Helen, it's crazy early in the morning for you right
5
now.
5 a.m. Almost
5
time
a.m.
to wake up.
Oh goodness.
You're gonna go take a nice nap. So apparently Nerdmoot won out with 50% of the vote. That's pretty good.
I like
pretty good
it.
chunk. Yeah. So I might run a couple polls on social media, but I'm liking that name. That's pretty good. You guys came up with that so fast in the chat. And
that was amazing.
was messaging my mods and I was saying like, what about this name? And they were like, what about this name? And then you guys come in and just drop Nerd Moot like it's nothing. Jeez, need to do more of these streams, I guess. All right. Well, guys, it has been an absolute pleasure. And as always, I love talking and nerding out with you guys. I'm sure we'll have many more instances in which to do this in the future. So for all those still here, we've still got 350 people here. Let them know where they can find you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Matt. It's always so much fun talking to you. You can find me at Men of the West on YouTube. I create very similar to Matt lore videos, all about Tolkien and the Legendarium. So you can find me there. I'm also on Twitter at Yoyston, and I'm on Facebook as well. And yeah, thank you so much. This has been a pleasure.
Yay! And yeah, thanks for the invite, Matt. Actually, I always remind Matt, we know each other for a very long time. I always remember that I did voice Éowyn for one of your videos.
That's right.
That was like two or 2.5 years ago. Yeah, it was a very long time ago. But yeah, so my name on YouTube and Twitter and where else, other social media, is the Clueless Fangirl. My actual name is Helen. And yeah, I do lore videos like The Boys, but mine are very baddie centric and and elven centric, and very some Marillion content. So if you want to prep for the show, you might find some videos there under the Clueless Fangirl. And yeah, I always love, I do live streams like that as well. I had Yoyston on. Matt will come on to talk dwarves with me one day.
Absolutely, yeah.
And yeah, I didn't make videos for a long time because life happened, but I'll go back to it. I'll be back.
Fantastic. Well, like I said, we'll have plenty more opportunities. I think we touched on some adaptations that are upcoming, some that are a little bit farther away, and we'll have many more fun opportunities to break those down and share what we think works, what we think doesn't work, and either celebrate or commiserate together after these things come out. We'll see which one it is. But in the meantime, so everyone here, there's still 300 some people here. If you haven't already, please hit the like button and then go subscribe to Men of the West and the Clueless Fangirl, and we will see you next time here on Nerd of the Rings.